My name is Shannon, Latoya Michelle Shannon. Born here in Omaha, Nebraska in 1981. I'm my mother's only child. So, and my father, I have a sister. I have a sister. So, but growing up, it was me and only me in the house.
Todd Patrick Shannon, born in New York City, actually, and born in New York City, raised in South Carolina. Have have two siblings, one older brother and a younger sister, and my mother was Patricia Shannon. She passed away in 1996, and at the age of 48, so she was pretty young. And my father, I don't. His name is Bill Rutherford, but I don't really know him. He and my mom separated when I was maybe 4 or 5, and so I don't know. He could be still living. He may be not. I don't know. So, but I don't know where he's from originally. I think he was born in New York. So as far as where I was raised, actually being born in New York City, but having a lot of family in South Carolina, we actually went back and forth quite a bit. So really early on, we lived mostly in New York City. Then when I started school, elementary, first grade, we were in South Carolina, and then we would stay there for a couple of years, and then we moved back to New York and stay there, and then we'd move back to South Carolina. So it was a lot of really instability. And my mother, being a single mom, she actually was at a point where she was working, but she didn't really have enough money to work and take care of us, so we stayed with family members when she went back to New York for a bit. And then finally we settled in South Carolina when I was in the 6th grade, and then we stayed there for the rest of my childhood. But we lived in subsidized housing. There were some tough times. We had some difficulties financially, and times where we uh, didn't have didn't have lights, or it didn't happen a lot, but it happened. And so it was a difficult time for us. And then my mom was sick, so my upbringing was difficult. Dad was never around, but my mother obviously did the best job she could, and she did it. I think she did a great job. Obviously, we're doing okay now.
My mother and father were married. They were married 8 years before having me. When I was around 2 years old, they ended up getting a divorce. So it was just my mother and I growing up. My mother worked and went to school. She worked full time and she went to school part time. And so I spent a lot of my childhood in either in school and in daycare. And so that was normal for me. But I don't have any hard times with that. Any hard memories of that. I had great people taking care of me. For me in school, I went to a Catholic school, and I was the only black girl in my class every year, and it was probably just maybe 2 or 3 of us in the whole school. It was difficult finding who I was, and this is why. At church, it was nothing but black people. It was an all black church. When I went to school, it was total opposite for me, and I don't remember feeling like I had friends at school. People that I was included. I feel like I was included in, like you know, at recess or something like that. And if I would ask if I could play with them, no one said no, but they weren't inviting. It didn't seem like I had my place there. And the thing about it is, when I would go to church, I got teased at church because a lot of the kids said, "You act like a white girl. You talk like a white girl." They looked at me as being uppity, and it was really hard to find my place there. I saw my mom graduate from college when I was 18. She graduated. But she went to school. She worked so hard throughout those years. I didn't see a lot of my dad throughout that time. He was there for maybe birthdays and stuff like that, and I would spend some weekends with him, but there wasn't really anything more. I have more memories of things that my mother and I did together.
So as far as the environment that we grew up in, being in the projects, basically, virtually all of the young men, you sold dope, you did dope, and that was kind of the thing. Not only that, but all of the young women, all of the young ladies were basically all of them were getting pregnant by the time they were 16. And my sister being the one exception. I think there were two other young ladies in our community that didn't get pregnant as teens. I mean, that was pretty prevalent. There was 4 apartment buildings in our little housing project, and all of the guys, all of the kids, and all of the males went to jail. One of the guys was killed over some drug deal. All of them, and then there was us, and then it was like we had this hedge around us. And I just know that was God's hand, His providence on us.
For me, if I experienced if anyone was mean to me because I was a black girl or anything like that, I had no idea that it was linked to racism. So I can honestly say that I don't have any stories of anyone really mistreating me in that way. Thank the Lord for that. I know that my mother went through some hard times. I know that my mother went through and had to deal with racism, as I found out later in life, but never did she ever teach me to be different or to have hatred in my heart or anything like that towards another race. Never.
No, when I was growing up, really going to school, I went to a school that was predominantly white. Virtually every school I've ever gone to was predominantly white. So I've always grew up with white friends and been a minority amongst my classmates, and that's always felt normal to me. It's been interesting for my generation because I know personally I didn't experience that even in an area that was predominantly white. In college, though, what did happen with me is that I noticed that as I went to college and as I advanced in my professional career, that obviously I became more of a minority. The higher you move up in your professional ranks, or depending on the industry, obviously. But I found that in college, as far as black males, gosh, I mean, we were pretty scarce. And then virtually every job that I've had, I've kind of been the only black male there. Maybe there's 2 or 3 others. So you think about those type of ratios. That to me still says that there's still some work to be done, but I don't know that at this point it can be necessarily attributed to racism. I think there's some other issues that are causing that, but obviously there's some lingering effects from the racism, and so. But I didn't experience that really personally growing up. I think it's just a testament to how far we've come. I think that we really have to, I think as black people, we really have to realize that at this point, it's about as good as it's going to get, I think, as far as there being no outside social pressures that are stopping blacks from achieving any level of success that we put our minds to. Barack Obama is a testament to that. I still think that the Barack Obama presidency did show, though, still that in our society there's still a little polarization with regarding race. It doesn't mean that we're as far as we can go as far as culturally how we think about race. Just saying that Barack Obama, I think his presidency demonstrates that we can ascend to any height, where a generation ago that was certainly not the case. But I think that when I think about blacks, many black people voted for Barack Obama because he was black. And there were some whites that had some doubts about him because he was black. So I think in that respect, we still see that there's still some work to be done. But I think where we really will have arrived is when his race doesn't matter. Me personally, I really didn't think much about that. I thought more about what he thought as a leader and what he was looking to do, and that was how I based my decision. So
I remember having conversations with a few black people about, the election and all of that. And when my heart was troubled when um, most people that I talked to voted for him strictly because he was black. And when I would ask questions about, well, what did you think about, his beliefs and what he stood for, they couldn't really answer it. And so that is what troubled me, because it's not about black and white. It's really not about that. Not when we're electing a president to to run the United States. And so for me, when we, like Todd said, when we can come past the point of looking at color, then I think we've made great progress.
As far as using the N word, I remember I used to use the N word all the time when I was young. Just amongst our peers, it was just something you did. It wasn't even anything you gave much thought to. Then when I got saved at 17, I started to re-examine, like, why do I do that? And to me, I felt uncomfortable. I felt some conviction about using the word. And so I stopped doing that. But I think for whites, it's hard to understand why we would do that. And it's not really something that I can explain. I personally think that a lot of the when I look at our culture in the black community, I look at young black people and the ones that use it every day in a casual way and they use it often. It generally is a mentality that basically the use of that word is a symptom of. It's not the cause of their problems. It's just a symptom of a certain mentality that I think is destructive. And it's not really a simple issue. It's not really a black and white issue where you say, well, if you use that word, you just have no moral compass. Or if you don't use it, then you've arrived. It's a lot of gray in between there. But I think that overall, I don't think it's healthy. I think the word is so loaded. I think particularly as people who are in the faith, I think we should set the example. And I just don't think it has any place in everyday speech. My kids don't ever hear it. I don't even really think they understand what it means.
What I would maybe say to that is that the young people of our generation who use that word are there's a lot of ignorance that follows that. I just believe that if they just really understood the root of it, if they really understood where that word came from and what it meant, maybe they're not saying it with the same meaning behind it, but if they understood what it used to mean, then maybe they would have a little bit more respect.
I would say that for my generation, the most important thing that we need to get back to is godly principles. Because the problems that we see in the black community, the fatherlessness, the poverty, the crime that's taking place, being perpetrated by mostly a lot of black males, it all comes back to no father being in the home. And why no fathers in the home is because we don't take the institution of marriage in the way that God intended it to be observed and held in high esteem. And I think if we get back to godly principles, these other things will fix themselves. And education is obviously important, but education doesn't solve marital issues. It doesn't solve the inability to love a person unconditionally. You don't learn that in college. You learn that from spiritual principles and godly principles. So if we start there, that's the reason why my family and our generation, my mother's children, we're all in a place where in just one generation, we've totally reversed our fortunes, But it starts with godliness. It doesn't take 60 years to change these things. My mother came from a situation where she, single mom in poverty, struggling. And that's none of her children's stories. And we changed that in about 15 years. And it started with God. So that would be my recommendation.
Coastal Carolina.
Best school ever.
Do you have a jersey?
Shannon. Go Coastal.
North High.
Oh yeah, be up, baby.
Freedom Worship Center.
Best church in Omaha.
Oh,
Best church ever.
Junkus.
What in the world?
If you ain't been, you should be there right now.